Hello, hello, hello. This is Catalyst Echo with Catalyst Echo Designs, and we are back with a transfers video. So the items that you will need in order to accomplish a layered transfer effect are the transfer itself. What I like to do is cut it all into little bitty bits, pull out the keyframe points that I want, the individual elements that I want, and cut that all out in advance and try to place it to create the composition that I want. So you need the transfer and the composition. You need the wooden transfer release tool that comes with each and every transfer. You'll need a very sharp razor to cut between doors and drawers. And I also am using a piece of just standard white chalk to mark positions. So once you figure out the composition of your transfer, the very first thing that you're going to need to do is mark out the different positions so that you can add the elements that recede most into the background first and the main compositional subject points over the top. So what I like to do is I'll take the subject, especially if it's a large piece, and I will mark out the important points. So you can see these little white marks of chalk that I've used. That's that bigger piece, that bigger transfer piece that I'm about to apply now. That was where the largest element, like the tallest element was going to be, and the place where it would hide the rest of the end of the transfers that I put on prior. All right. Now, this is a technique where I am putting a transfer on something with a curve and a bump out type area. And you can see it's very important to push the pieces that need to go into the corners into that corner. So I started it at one side, and then I moved on to the middle, and then I go over to the other side just to make sure that the transfer is laying down properly. And burnishing with this wooden transfer release tool is the best way that I have found. There are other tools that you can use to release a transfer, but particularly with the Dixie Belle Bells and Whistles line, you don't really need to. These release quite nicely. Incidentally, the transfer that I'm using is called the Cacti and Succulents transfer, and I loved it so much because not only did it come with clusters of these beautiful succulents, but it also came with individual elements so that I could create my own little clusters or add value or add additional, like foliage and succulents into the clusters that they'd already created. So once you cut between the drawers, you just want to pull out the drawers and make sure that the remaining transfer that is coming over just lays itself down. I really love the way that transfers look on drawers because you can get a pretty much perfect look without a lot of effort and hassle. So here I am bringing in little tiny leaf details just to add a little bit more to the composition and bring that larger piece that I put on the bottom drawer, bring that just through the rest of the piece. For this composition, I wanted to sweep the eye all over the front part of this piece. And so you'll see how placement of the transfers helps me to do that. And I have that green one sort of placed just off frame. You'll see that I move that around. As you go, it's important to take a step back. I think I've spoken to you a lot about that during this process, but it's important to take a step back and see how things are going. This little leg detail that I'm working on now is one of my favorite parts of the whole entire piece. And the only reason that I put it together using little small individual elements from the Cacti and Succulents transfer was because I just wanted to move my composition in with a sense of movement, place my composition with a sense of movement throughout the piece. So you'll see how I continue to do that as we go on. And I really love the way that turned out. I'll have to take a bunch of pictures and show it to you. You don't really get to see it too much in the course of this video, but yeah, you'll have to just see how it looks because it's really one of my favorite parts, especially with the door and the way that the elements worked together on the door. Okay. So now we are just placing this. And again, when you have multiple different uneven surfaces, you just want to make sure that you start with the piece I like to start with the piece on the surface that recedes into the back first, and then move it around towards the piece that is more of a bump out. Now you can do it whichever way you want, but the in my opinion, it's just important to have a plan and do it that way. And then when you're done, unfortunately, you didn't get to see this part, but yeah, I just make sure that everything is pushed down and perfect. All right. And now we're moving on to the next part of the composition. Transfers are some of the best ways where you can add interest and a composition to a piece without, if you don't know how to, if you don't know how to hand paint, if you don't know how to, or you don't want to go through all of that. So I already know that based on the work I've put into this piece, that it would not be cost effective to sell it if I tried to hand paint in all these succulent details. Thankfully, Dixie Belle came out with this transfer, the Cacti and Succulents transfer, so that I could add that element of the things that my mother did quite a lot, which were gardening and creating. So yes. And we're just adding different elements in here. And what I wanted was to create this kind of fluid, organic S-type shape throughout this focal point on the front of this armoire. So adding in these different leaves and little small elements that come with the Cacti and Succulents transfer, I was able to create this very, very organic, flowy kind of focal point on the front here and carry it through to the doors and down that leg. So yeah, you can see how easy it is to layer a transfer. It is one of the better ways to add graphical elements, painterly type elements without going through. This would take a long time and be a very, very, very difficult thing to hand paint. But these transfers allow me to do this, add these really, really detailed, beautiful clusters of succulents for significantly less time and money that it would take me to paint them by hand. They are a little bit of a cheat, I suppose, but I really quite like them because I think that they have such endless possibilities. All these little elements and areas that I've added, you can mix and match, you can layer, you can distress them, you can add things above them. They can be part of your background or they can be the main focal subject points. And you can use parts of the transfer, you can use the entire transfer. They're really, really so versatile. And I'm glad that this piece allowed me the opportunity to show you how easy and completely wonderful the bells and whistles Cacti and Succulents transfer was to work with, and all the different elements. I didn't use a lot of the cactus parts of it. I'm going to save that for another piece, or maybe different parts of this piece, but probably another piece. But you can see I used a lot of the succulent and a lot of the leaf elements that were in the Cacti and Succulents transfer. And I was able to add quite a lot of interest in visual design to a piece in only about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes worth of time. So yeah. So now you're going to see, here's a cluster that came with the piece. And then above on the left in the middle there, you can see me preparing another cluster that I'm going to create. And I really think I did quite a good job of like taking elements of the transfer and creating a cluster that was unclockable. But you'll just have to tell me what you think. So yeah, now you see what I did there. Do you see how I made it kind of like a door so that I could have it on there? I placed it on there with a little bit of masking tape using on the front there. Yeah, see, and I'm using it kind of like a door so that I can check exact placement of all the things that are going below it. That, if you're lucky enough to be building on the side of a door like that, is a really great way of handling that. Otherwise, use your chalk to mark out the keyframe points of the largest and most forefront subject matter type aspect of the transfer, and then put your background transfers on as follows. So yeah, you can see we're just adding that in there, and I think that looks pretty good. I think that looks pretty unclockable. I think it's quite beautiful, actually. I really quite love this side of the door. I think it came out really, really well. So I liked that so much that I was like, I have these little berries and I have a few other things. Let's see where I can place them for optimal effect. So I took a step back, I looked around, and then I thought, I think this little area that I've done down on the leg needs an answering cluster here. So we're just adding a few leaves and a few of these pink flowers. And then these beautiful blackberries are coming in next. And I think it turned out really, really nice. I do love transfers for this in this regard. So I hope I've shown you a little bit about how to use transfers on your furniture pieces and the different things that you can do with them. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that you would like to see me do with transfers in the future. And be sure to click subscribe and that little ringy-dingy-ding button to be notified whenever I upload. Alrighty, and as we're finishing up here, I hope you have an amazing night. Have a great day. Bye. And be sure to subscribe. Don't forget, subscribe. Do it now. Make a comment. Yay.